Hi, and welcome to episode number 53 of the Introvert Biz Growth Podcast, the show where I talk to introverts who grow their business and make a difference. As always, I'm Sarah Senecroce, your host, and I'm so happy that you're spending another episode with me. This episode is a double whammy. First and foremost, it's a great conversation with Leisa Peterson, an abundance coach whom I met via her own podcast called The Art of Abundance. And second, it's also an invitation to a free webinar with Leisa and I that's taking place this Friday, May 4th. Leisa and I connected so well that we wanted to do something together, or I wanted her to present her work to my community. And so I'm bringing her to you in an exclusive webinar, a free training webinar this Friday, May 4th. And I'll tell you more about the webinar after our conversation. But first, let me tell you a bit more about Leisa. So Leisa Peterson helps people get out of their own way when it comes to money so they create a life filled with joy, love, and abundance. She combines her skills of being a longtime entrepreneur and money expert, then mixes in mindfulness practices, hypnosis, and other breakthrough techniques to help clients reconnect to their true selves while removing their limiting beliefs. Leisa is passionate about exposing the fallacy of lack in our culture whilst encouraging the understanding of what it means to be living in abundance. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Leisa Peterson. Leisa, it's so good to talk to you today.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm so excited for this conversation.
So am I. As I just told you offline, I feel like I know you because I've been listening to your podcasts and watching you on videos. So it feels like I'm just connecting with an old friend. I don't know. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it's just like, I just know this person.
I'm so excited to know you and to be learning more about what you do too.
Excellent. Well, besides the official bio that I just read to my audience in the intro, can you tell us a little bit about, who Leisa is, your story, and make sure that it kind of relates to your introversion? Because as we discussed also offline, you've done some research and really recognized now that that's kind of who you are. You're an introverted online entrepreneur.
I definitely love time by myself, and this has been a theme throughout my life. I currently live in Sedona, Arizona, and it's funny because there are a lot of people like me here, and I enjoy it a lot because I go to a gym and a spa, and it's funny, we end up having the most in-depth conversations in the locker room. And it's unlike anything, I think I came to Sedona because of this desire to be closer to people who are like me, where I could feel like I am who I am. And as you know, I love to meditate. I love to use mindfulness practices to build my business, to make decisions, I've literally built a business out of my introspective qualities. And I pinch myself on a regular basis because I can't believe that I get to do this and make money through something that I think for much of my life, I felt like it was a problem and that I needed to hide it from the world, and that I wasn't an extrovert caused me to work really, really hard to convince myself and the rest of the world that I was. And now I don't have to do that anymore. So I'm not sure if that gives a good, little backstory of who I am. But
it does. But I also want to know more about, that transition, because to me, it's really hard to imagine an introverted financial advisors who, has to go out there and make the sale, I guess. You had to get your clients. And then from there, how did you transition into just saying, okay, this is it. I'm going to do my own thing?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question because I have been in sales for most of my career, even though I would have staunchly said that wasn't true. But now as I look back, I've always been in sales in some capacity. Partly, as you know, my backstory is I'm a money expert. I love money. I like making it. I found myself drawn to the positions where I could make limitless amounts of money in what I do, which was in the financial industry. And so I had to find a different way of doing that, even though, again, at the time I didn't realize what I was doing, but I would never cold call, for example. Like that is just not something. And when people told me I had to, I'd rather quit my job than to do that. So what I've done is I worked in financial services for almost 25 years before I started my company, Wealth Clinic. I worked in a lot of different roles, both behind the scenes as an executive for a large bank in the United States, and then eventually went into mortgage banking and underwriting, and then became a financial advisor. And each step along the way, particularly when I became a mortgage banker and had to, sell, is I think I looked at the system of the way everyone else was doing it. And I said, well, that's not going to work for me. So what do I do to make this successful? And it was networking. Like I'm great at building strong, solid, friendships and connections with people. And so I did that. And I said, well, who are the people that I get to meet who can help me? And it was realtors. So I started developing the relationships that I was comfortable developing and getting to know them, supporting them, helping them out. And then before you knew it, they started to provide me introductions to their clients. Those were warm leads. And that was easy for me because somebody's like, oh, I've heard such great things about you. Can we talk about mortgage? Boom. And what's interesting now is I'm still in my business now as a virtual entrepreneur and a coach. I am still looking for the pathway to doing that exact thing. And I wouldn't say that I've totally figured it out, but I can tell you just this morning, I was answering a Facebook poll and people were saying, how do you attract your clients? And I was like, oh, yeah, there it is. I network and I'll speak. But even the speaking that I do is a warm introduction where people are asking me questions like what we're doing here. Or I'm on the stage and I'm showing people the work that I do rather than telling them about the work that I do. So does that help?
Yeah, that's such a smart strategy. And I think that introverts who are in a sales position or who have to bring in actual clients and who are not running an online business, I think that's a great strategy to team up with somebody who is then going to do the selling for them, because that's essentially what you did with these realtors. I think that's great, because when you said networking, I was like, that's strange. That's the first time an introvert tells me that, they enjoy networking. But then when you went a bit further and expanded further, I was like, oh, she means networking with just, a few small amount of people and building strong relationships. And then they just bring you the clients. That's so smart. I think what I'm doing in my business is similar. And I think maybe that's what you were referring to, is building these joint venture partnerships, right? Where you have similar businesses, similar audiences, but not necessarily the same kind of offering. And so you're just kind of referring to each other. And for example, you could host a webinar for my audience or something like that, right? Is that kind of what you were referring to?
Totally. I mean, I think I'm just going down this path more and more. But what I found is with the people that are on my, email list, they receive my updates. With people that are already working with me in some capacity, they've done some of my programs, I feel that connection with them, right? They're not strangers. They're connected. They understand what I'm doing. So let's say you came into the equation and you had something that I was really excited about. As I explain what you do to them, I'm not going to be bumping up against a lot of discomfort. I'm going to feel like I'm telling people, that I love and really care about more about you. And then vice versa. I think if you were to do that for me, then I'm going to be a very different person, in all honesty, when you're asking me questions and we're talking about a shared experience that you're introducing to people that you know. It just feels so much better to me than going out to complete strangers. And I'll even notice, like, when I am in those situations, I'll say a lot and I'll do things that somebody could just be like, wait a minute, who is that person? Because I'll be different than the person who shows up when I'm comfortable.
Well, you don't have already that established credibility. So it feels kind of like, scary out there because they don't know you. They have never seen your website, nothing. You just have to kind of explain from scratch who it is you are and what you do. And I did networking locally here, and boy, that just did not work for me at all because, I usually just came home with 2 business cards and wasn't even the right kind of people, because then I just ended up in a conversation where they were talking and I was just listening the whole evening. So, yeah.
So maybe we have a new word for this. Maybe it's something like warm networking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not the traditional networking. I kind of like the partnership idea. I really like. And I think us introverts are really good at shining the spotlight on somebody else and kind of taking a step back. And so I think it's a great teamwork. Talk a little bit about your current business then. So tell us what it is you do with your clients. And what my audience is also interested in is how you generate revenue. So you kind of your business model, do you do one-on-one coaching, but you also have some products? Explain a bit about that.
Perfect. So I'm a numbers person, so I like to explain things that way to start. When I understood this question, I was like, private coaching is just under about half of my revenue. So the one-on-one time with my clients focused on primarily business and money. And so the combination of those two things combined with self-realization. So like, how can I be showing up more fully in the work that I do, making more money and creating a business that I'm truly passionate about. The other is a lesser extent, but growing, is group coaching and mastermind programs that I lead. And I've done some different things. One of my programs is called Heal Your Money Story, Heal Your Life. And it's like a 90-day excursion into the journey of your experiences with money so that you can come out on the other side empowered to take steps in your life, in your business around money that will help you, go wherever you want to go. Everybody comes to it for different reasons. I also do affiliate programs and joint ventures like you talked about, and some direct marketing of different things that I've been testing over the past few years. So that's pretty much how my business is structured. And any questions to that?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. It sounds like you definitely leverage the use of the internet in order to have group coachings and then also have these small programs, because I know that I'm on one right now, the Infinite Abundance. So that's something that you're working on relaunching as well, right?
Yeah. The other thing I want to add is I've been teaching meditation and doing retreats since early 2000s. And using these skills around the introversion is something that I have really perfected around creating groups, and not just to show up and be with one another, but how can we create groups that are completely free of judgment, that are totally there to support one another in a really healing fashion. And when I talk about the group programs, I'd say that's very, very near and dear to my heart, because I've proven a concept, which is, can I create groups where people, like anyone, whether introverted or extroverted, can come in and be together with each other and feel very, very safe to be their true selves?
Right. Yeah, I think I've heard you talk about that on the podcast with Jonathan Fields, who's also very good at growing community, right? Even bigger than just groups, but community. And that was a very interesting conversation. I'll make sure to link to that episode in the show notes. Yeah, very interesting. So we already talked about your ability of, kind of networking, but on a deep level. Now you just added another, maybe, I think it's probably also related to introversion, the fact that you're very good at creating these safe environments. Is there anything else you would like to add that you see as your biggest strength as an introverted entrepreneur?
I think empathy, being able to put myself in other people's shoes and quickly relate to them. And I feel like even though on the surface level, we're all very different, what I've learned is at the core, we're all one. And I approach my work from that perspective. So I'm really looking to understand what someone's life experiences have done to bring them to where they are. And then also moving to this place of dropping away those stories in some ways so that we can identify with each other at a really deep level, just how much commonality we have.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that's really important in the work that you do, because to me, obviously, you're more than just this business coach, because as we know, the money stories, they go much deeper than just starting when you started your business. And you often mention that on your podcast as well. I mean, it starts probably when you're still a small child and how, your parents deal with money and all of that. So it's kind of almost like you do also life coaching. So you definitely need a lot of empathy and being able to put yourself in your client's shoes. Yeah. What about a challenge that you have as an introverted entrepreneur? So what would you say is the one thing that you wish were different or you were better at?
Yeah, I can feel what's happening to other people, right? Kind of building on that same theme.
Mm.
And when it comes to sales and people making decisions, as I was doing the research about the introversion, I had heard about the idea that the insula in the brain for, some individuals is bigger. And they've done studies about the idea that it's not just introversion, but I think there's a commonality between it, which is you can feel the emotions that are going on in other people, even at the level that they can't maybe understand or they may be in denial to.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a big part of my work. But the challenge with that is when you go into sales decisions, I have the ability to feel exactly what people are going through and the resistance that they're coming up against about paying for something. And in that moment, I can go into the story right with them and be like, oh yeah, you don't have the money, you're really struggling and I understand. Or I can take a step back and be like, what is it that I need to do to help them the most? Like, even if that means going against the resistance that they're running it up against. And that is incredibly difficult for myself to do. Like, I notice it and then I still have to catch myself. And sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, or it's like, wait a minute, you're going into their story and you're not going to serve them if you do that. You need to stay back and be like, you've created this, you know what you have to offer, whether they take it or not, is their decision, but doesn't mean you have to go into their story and lose sight of why you've done what you've done to help people.
Yeah, that really speaks to me. I definitely struggle with that too. I think it also, like, this too much empathy also comes up when I feel like, I could be helping this person and yet, they don't have the money. So, I should still be helping them. I should be helping everyone. And so that can lead to somehow to overwhelm or, feeling bad because I'm not helping them even though I could. And so it's definitely something I'm also struggling with. And it's really hard for me to take this distance and say, yeah, but you need to put in place also some boundaries around, your time or other resources that you need to also protect. Take us to an aha moment, either in your business or in your life, something pivoted for you where you changed.
A lot of what I teach is around the fact that abundance is our birthright and that lack and scarcity have been things that we've been conditioned to believe and to continue to support in our awareness. We also have a consumerism culture that constantly tells us that if we have something, then everything will be better in our lives. And so we're constantly bombarded with this concept of lack. Well, I think the reason I started my company was because I bought that story hook, line, and sinker for much of my life. And I was trying to satisfy the idea of lack by making lots and lots of money, which I did. And what my big aha moment was not until I had started my company and I was teaching people about what it meant to live a wealthy life and how they could shift their awareness, both inner and outer perspectives about money to do that. And in the course of teaching a class, someone sent me something, and you know how it works. Like, you may have seen it before, but it wasn't that one moment where everything was going to click. And they sent me something about abundance. And as I started to read it, I had this emotional breakdown where I realized that I had, in fact, been living in lack all my life. No matter how much money I made, no matter how much success I had found in my life, I still did not feel like I was enough. And the aha moment was the realization that that's where I had been and that that was no longer acceptable to me. But in the same token, I didn't totally understand how I was going to change my life. And maybe I had the breakdown because I had created the conditions to create my company and I was off and running. And now at least I had created a bed. I just wasn't quite sure how to sleep in it with what that meant. I knew that I couldn't live this way anymore. It broke my heart that I had suffered so much by this concept of lack and that I wanted out of it. And so, over the course of this past 4 years, I've had many breakthroughs along the way where all of a sudden something really, really clicked. And I realized that the work I had been doing was actually shifting things. A funny, quick story is we were driving my daughter to college. She had moved out of the dorm and she was moving now into her own house. And we had her car loaded up with, the four of us. I have a son and my daughter, all of her stuff on the roof. Oh, and then the dog. And it was like 114 in Palm Springs area. And the transmission on her car blew up. And it was this moment, and her car, by the way, wasn't worth what the transmission was going to cost. And so we ended up getting it towed, and we're in the desert, and, we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And it was in the moment of going through this experience where I didn't fall apart. I was able to be there fully present for my family. It still chokes me up because it was so beautiful. I could see that the work had affected me at a level that my parents did not model for me. And I was able to hold the space for love and compassion for my family, that this was difficult, but that we could easily take care of it. And we had the financial, wherewithal to do that. And there didn't need to be drama and fights and frustration and meanness, that we could just all be in a really good place. And when we were driving out of Palm Springs, my daughter said to me, and she's 19 at the time, she's like, I don't know what just happened, but I just want you to know how much it means to me that this is what our life is like now.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah.
And she knew, that I had not been that person for much of her life, and that my work was helping me. And it was a big turning point because we have to help ourselves before we can help other people. And my work started really drastically changing after that. And I started touching a lot more people's lives through my own, understanding.
It's a beautiful story. And I think what you just said, I think is worth repeating. And you said, we have to work on ourselves before we have this confidence and calm, and everything changes once you've done the work on yourself, in order to then be able to help your clients. It's so true. Yeah. All right. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk more kind of like techie stuff. I like to call this section the 3 golden nuggets. If you would share one of your personal habits, I have a little guess about what it is. Maybe you want to say it. Something that you do on a regular basis.
Yes. So the thing I do on a regular basis is this exercise called the wealth flower. And I do it again and again, and I encourage my clients to do it again and again. And it's a practice that walks people through a series of questions that help them get really clear on what it is that they really, really, really want in their life. And the reason I say it, that people do it again and again, is most of the time, the first time you do it, you're going to notice within a short period of time that you're not actually giving yourself enough permission to do what you really, really want. But you got to start somewhere. And so these questions have been, proven over the past 3 or so years since I first came up with it and started using it in my own life, that people return to it again and again, because even if you do end up creating the life that you put on that piece of paper, by the time you get there, then there are going to be new things that appear that you're wanting to work towards. So it's a great practice to continue to just notice where you're holding back and where you're living full out. And that's what I do.
That's great. And people can access that for free on your website. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's like the first thing you see right when you go to the wealthclinic.com site.
Excellent. So I encourage you to grab that. And is that kind of part of your morning or evening routine, or?
What I do is I'll do it probably every 3 to 6 months, but it is now part of my morning routine. So I took that exercise, and you mentioned infinite abundance, and I integrated that exercise into like a month-long mindfulness practice. But the idea is you can start wherever, and you eventually start to want to move towards, I mean, for me, in the morning, if I can set powerful intentions of what I'm going to be doing today and the coming week, how I'm going to be making sure that the actions that I am taking support what I want to have happen on the wealth flower, then that's the daily practice.
Okay, great. What about some kind of internet resource that you use a lot, like, something online, like Zoom, for example, or something like that?
I love Zoom. The thing that came to me that might be an unusual response is I work with a company called Interact, and they have created a really cool platform. And I think you actually talked to Josh in the past, but the Interact system is quiz oriented. So it allows people to fill out quizzes and understand if the work that you're doing is something that they might be interested in. And I use that in my business. And the reason I bring it up is I'd have to say it's one of the most successful things I've ever done in my business, because it's allowed me to create a very low cost ad on Facebook, and it continuously brings people to my work so that they can figure out if it's something that they want to stick around with. And it's very, very cost effective. So I have to salute Josh, because he's been
that's great. Yeah, that's a great testimonial for Josh. And yeah, Josh was on the podcast. So fellow introvert who built this. I've used it in the past. The only thing that doesn't quite work for me is that, running Facebook ads about LinkedIn on Facebook is just not as efficient. I don't know. Somehow people, just like, well, we're on Facebook. Don't talk to me about LinkedIn. So far, I haven't had any success with that. But otherwise, the quiz itself, yeah, very good tool. What about a book that you would recommend to the audience, and why?
When I tuned into this one, what came up was The One Thing with Gary Keller, which I don't think he is an introvert, but you never know. I think the reason I thought of that book is just right now there's a lot of energy around how can I be more effective with my time? How can I be very careful that I'm not creating drains, leaky drains, I guess, in my business? And The One Thing allows you to get really, really focused with your time, your attention. And I strongly recommend all my clients to read it.
Oh, good. It's interesting because this morning I was on a podcast interview, and the host asked me to share a song. And what came up for me is Take the Time to Waste a Moment by the Kings of Leon. And to me, that was really an important message, because I'm actually trying to learn how to waste a moment, because I'm actually, almost too much always trying to be efficient and trying to make sure that every minute is in my business. And so to me, the challenge this year is actually to just go outside for a walk, or just waste a moment. And it's actually not wasted, because you're just enjoying the moment. So it's kind of countering your one thing, but I think both of them are important. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And I have a question for you. On the research that I was doing about introverts, they talked about the fact that there was a thought that extroverts are more living in the moment and introverts are more, living in this world of the introspection, which may be the past or the future. And I'm just curious what you think about that, or if you've ever thought of it that way.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. There's actually also been research that said that extroverts are generally happier than introverts. And it has to do with the fact that, extroverts just kind of like live in the moment and accept the moment how it is, where introverts are always, like you said, either thinking about the should haves and, how to change the past or how to change the future. And I do think introverts find it challenging to just kind of let go and waste a moment. My colleague, Kat Nelligan, who's running the Creative Introvert podcast, she's actually doing a series, I think the whole year she calls it My Year of Fun. And so she has these episodes, can't remember if weekly or bi-weekly, where she shares, how she's trying to do fun things. And as introverts, it's not easy to find the things that we find fun. It's really interesting how she, expands her comfort zone in a way. And she was signing up for a dance class and, different things that are supposed to be fun. But then she's like, oh, that was not fun at all. So, it's an interesting research. And I do think that there's something to that extroverts might just be living more in the moment and therefore maybe be happier. I don't know. We just ask ourselves too many questions, I think.
Yeah. Very interesting.
We can continue this conversation because I think, it's an interesting topic to ponder about. But for today, I think we're going to wrap up here. So this has been just extremely delightful. It was great talking to you. Thanks so much for sharing your story, your insights. I always ask my guests at the end what you're grateful for. So what are you grateful for today or this week, Leisa?
The opportunity to teach people what I've learned along my journey is the thing that I am deeply grateful to. I feel like it gives so much more meaning to all the things that I've tried to figure out when I can pass it to another person and have their life be more joyful as a result.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for being here, for taking the time. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
So, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. And if you did, you are really going to love the webinar that Leisa and I are hosting together this Friday, May 4th. And here's some of what you will discover during this free training call. We'll talk about the number one most critical factor for mastering your mind. Leisa's going to share a step-by-step process for abundance mastery, plus the fundamentals for success, the things that successful people do to master their minds and which sets them apart from others. And these are all things that you can do too. So we know that our mindset is everything when it comes to being our best selves and living our best life. If our beliefs and thoughts are limited and negative, it flows into how we feel about ourselves in life, and it impacts the choices we make and the actions we take. So this is really your opportunity to notice how what you inwardly believe, think, feel, and choose to do is what creates your outer results and becomes your life. So if you want to get better results in any area of your life, then you want to get really interested in what's going on inside of you, because this is where your power comes from. So after I met Leisa online and binge listened to all her podcasts, or a lot of them, I attended this exact same workshop that she hosted for her community and then went through her entire program. And I absolutely had to share this with you. So you know how much I love it when people make a difference. And this had a huge impact on my life. And I hope it will have the same impact on your life. So please join us at sarahsfave.com/abundant leader. So that's Sarah with an H at the end, SARAHSFAV, like for favorites. sarahsfave.com/abundant leader, all in one word. And if you missed the live webinar and are listening to this a couple of days after, still sign up and you should receive the replay. And if you're listening to this too late, just reach out to Leisa by going to wealthclinic.com and ask her if she's hosting a similar webinar again soon. So again, you can join us for this free training call that takes place on Friday, May 4th at sarahsfave.com/abundant leader. And if you're listening to this on a mobile device, just check out the description and all the links are clickable, so you can just click on that link to sign up. So that's it for this episode of the Introvert Biz Growth Podcast. Again, check out Leisa and her website at wealthclinic.com or join us for the free webinar on May 4th at sarahsfave.com/abundant leader. Thanks so much for listening. This is Sarah Zinacruce signing off from the Introvert Biz Growth Podcast. Remember, you need to use your unique introverted superpowers in order to make a difference.